I had this flash forward moment where I was like, if I continue this path, I'm going to end up getting this job, doing this stuff, and I'll be, in my retirement age. And what will I have actually done? So I'm sitting there laying up looking at the ceiling. And the answer to my question was, if I wasn't here, what would happen? The answer was,
Welcome to the fastest growing podcast on personal growth, teaching you the life lessons you didn't learn in school. It's the Better Than Best Academy. And today, my guest is a legend on X, formerly known as Twitter. He's the founder of Creator Decoded. He's gotten $10 million worth of client results. He's showing brands how he sells high ticket offers. His name is Sam Ocean. Now, Sam, welcome in. I'm super stoked that you're on the podcast today, and I'm excited to dive in. And with that said, I feel like this question might be familiar to you since you've worked with Mindvalley. So my first question for you today, I'm curious, what would make today's conversation extraordinary for you?
so first of all, thank you for bringing me on. I see that colorful drum set you got in the back. I have this guitar back here, but it's not as cool as what you got. So I got to rethink the studio a little bit. The what 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 would make this conversation great for me today? Apology, that's the question.
Yeah, what would make the conversation extraordinary?
Yeah, man, I do enjoy getting into some stories. I think going beneath tactics and tips and things like this, and like, where do those things come from? Where do the lessons come from? How did we even get here? For me, those are the kind of things that make something like this extraordinary. And I do just enjoy reminiscing a little bit and talking about the origin sometimes.
I love it. And you're in the right place because I agree. I feel like we can get too bogged down with the technical, practical things. And I think it's beautiful that what lessons can be gleaned from a great story. And of course, reminiscence always fun. So you're definitely in the right place. I like to emphasize that with a lot of my guests is this is a safe place to be yourself, to show up. I like to hold that tension and go deeper than most people probably do. But yeah, with that said, most podcasts do usually open up with the usual, get to know you, and that can be kind of lame, honestly. But I'm really curious to hear your origin story. Like, if you want to dive in, you can go as far back as you want to, as interesting as you want to. But I'm curious to hear kind of like the pieces of you that maybe you don't always share.
Yeah, so an origin story I don't usually start with is the one where I'm upstairs laying on the floor of my bedroom looking at the ceiling. I had been wearing the same clothes for 2 weeks in a row, and I'm only like 19 years old at this moment. And I'm staring at the ceiling being like, I asked myself a question, which was, what would happen if I didn't exist on this planet? It was nothing bad. It was much more of a philosophical question. And I had asked myself that because I was coming out of like, quote unquote, a depression. Not literally. I was just very sad because I had been going to school, I had been going to college, and it just wasn't working out for me. I tried and it was hard to get into it. And as a young man going into the world, one of the things I think about all the time is like, I just want to be accepted. I want to make friends. I want to talk to girls, things like this. But it seemed like nobody wanted to talk to me. Now, that kind of sucked. And I felt, I don't want to say lost. I just kind of felt ignored, unwanted, things like this. I had this flash forward moment where I was like, if I continue this path, I'm going to end up getting this job, doing this stuff, and I'll be, in my retirement age. And what will I have actually done? So I'm sitting there laying up looking at the ceiling. And the answer to my question was, if I wasn't here, what would happen? The answer was nothing would happen. Nothing would change. The birds would still be chirping. The sky would still be blue. The sun would still come out and everything would still be amazing. That thought, realizing that if I wasn't here, nothing would change, actually freed me.
Mm.
It unlocked me. And it gave me this realization that, man, I can literally treat my life like an experiment. No matter how it goes, the world is going to be okay. And it almost seems like I'm going to be okay too. And so from that moment onwards, I dropped out of college. And I dropped out just because, as an experiment, I wanted to say, what would be fun right now? Well, I sure don't want to do this, but I still want to be successful. So I gave myself a mission, which was, I want to prove you can be successful without college. This was back in 2011. So it was a much bigger step to do something like that back then than it was today where it's almost a little bit more accepted that you don't, take the college path if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And that like that's truly where I feel like I was reborn. So that's where I fully gained consciousness and I started making my own decisions. Now that story leads into where we are today, but there's many twists and turns along the way. So I'll stop there for a moment.
Man, I want you to keep going. This is so great. You got me locked in. And I love that you set out with that idea of making it without college, and it seems like such a big goal, but at the same time, just very straightforward as far as your task. Yeah, I'm curious, man. Carry on.
Man, so it was fascinating because back then, to me, that was the biggest possible thing I could possibly even think of. I was like, man, this is huge. What I didn't realize is that was just the first step. Like, I was just taking the first step into a much bigger world than I ever could have imagined. So, mind you, when I did this, I had no idea what entrepreneurship was. I didn't say I'm gonna quit college to start a business. I didn't even know you could like start a thing. Like that's where my mindset was. I never sold lemonade as a kid. I wasn't selling candy at my high school, like middle schools or anything. Didn't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. I'm just like, I'm gonna go figure out how to do this. And finding that answer is what was fun for me. So over the next three, actually, what I did is I registered a domain name because I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to share my lessons. I was inspired. I was a new man. And I bought the domain name Sam's Doing What. The whole point was if I go tell people what I'm doing or they hear about what I'm doing, the response would be like, Sam's doing what? And so I bought a camera and I started posting on YouTube also. So I started writing, I started posting on YouTube. Little did I know that was the beginning of my creator journey. It all just happened naturally. Back then, it wasn't really about followers or any of this stuff. There was a big blogging culture, people just writing about their life, and I wanted to be a part of it. 3 years go by, and I'm just doing these odd jobs, not really doing anything like important, you could say, not making any progress, but I'm learning a lot. I'm just like excited to learn. I'm going to the library every day studying books. That's when I learn about entrepreneurship and that you can actually start your own thing and actually create your own money solving problems in the world. That led me to searching online and I came across a video by the founder of Mind Valley. It was some video about personal development, some video about how you can realize your fullest potential and you can do it in like this way. And here's how you can do it. And that video just fascinated me. I never seen anything like that. And so I was watching that. And at the same time, I was like, man, I need to go start this, go get some type of cool job. I don't know. I need to get a base or something. And so I started writing down all these companies it would be fun to work with or do. And like Mind Valley's in there. And so I go look at the website and it was one of the only companies that's like, we don't care if you have a college degree or not. We just want to hire you if you're fit. Again, back then I was like, wow, like I actually have a chance here. And you don't turn in a cover letter, you turn in a cover letter video. Remember, I had bought a camera like a year ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, the stars are aligning. So I go make a 3-minute video. I put my whole heart into it. I learn editing. I stay up 24 hours that night. And I made the best damn video I could. I turned it in. 2 days later, I get an email from HR saying, congratulations, Sam. We want to talk to you. I have my first interview and I'm dressed up, got my suit on. I'm just ready for it. And 5 weeks later, I have another 5 interviews. And I eventually get the email that says, you're hired. You're coming over. The crazy part, man, is they're not in the USA. They're in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which is Southeast Asia. So as a 21-year-old, I ended up booking a one-way plane ticket halfway around the world to go live. And I'd never left the country before, to go live in a country with completely different moral standards, values, to go work at a company for my very first job.
That's
So
crazy. I
that's
love
the
that.
next, again, there's many twists and turns after that, but I'll stop there for a moment.
Man, that's so cool. And what piqued my interest is I've consumed some of Mind Valley's content through various coaches and been inspired by what they're doing. So it's so cool to see that's what inspired you to reach out to them and how you, man, I couldn't imagine being 21, leaving everything you know to go step into the unknown. Man,
Bro,
continue, man. I
it
and I
was
want to
just
go other places, but man, this story's so good.
like
I got to hear more.
it like wasn't even stepping into the unknown. It was getting a full running leap off of a cliff into an abyss, and you don't know what's on the other end. Like, honestly, man, I remember the plane took off. I had to take 4 planes. I was in a city and I had to go from one city to LA. LA, we hopped on one of those planes that fits like 300 people. So there's like, it's a 2-decker plane. So there's like an upper part and a lower part. The wings almost look like it's going out like the edges of a football field. Like as the plane's flying, like the wings are flapping up and down. It's in a language I don't know. It was Chinese. Like, man, like what am I getting myself into? And so we land, we get into the city, Kuala Lumpur, and I go into the office because I'm like, I'm going into an office and this place is just filled with life. There was 60 different nationalities of employees who worked here. There's about 12 different languages you hear on a daily basis. Again, all I knew was English. I didn't know anything about anything. And again, I'm hungry and ambitious. On the first week of the job, okay, the CEO, he calls a private marketing meeting. I'm not a marketer. Mind you, I got hired for customer support. Back then, I actually used to hate marketing and sales. I wasn't about it. I was just like more creator, let's create content, kumbaya, personal development, whatever. But I was hungry to see how things worked. So I wasn't invited, but I snuck into the back of the room. There's about 25 of like the marketers who were invited, me in the back kind of hiding. The CEO kicks off the meeting by saying, okay, guys, we did $500,000 in the last 24 hours of our launch. Now, he kept talking. Apparently that was just a normal update and people were used to hearing stuff like that. For me, that's when my reality shattered. That's when it was like a flashbang went off and I couldn't hear anything he was saying after that because I was still stuck on this thought of like, how the hell do you make $500,000 in 24 hours? That's possible. Boom, the bubble popped. I realized, wow, I'm in the place where I can learn how to do this too. So that's when I used to hate marketing and sales. That's the moment I became obsessed with marketing and sales because I realized this could be my key to life. I want to learn how to be successful without college. This is it. And so I spent the next weeks, dare I say months, going in on every single meeting I could into every single department, studying, is this how they made $1 million? No. Is this how they made $500,000? No. And then it was finally, I found the weird, nerdy copywriting kids sitting in the corner who wrote the words for the pages and the websites and the ads and the emails. And it turns out those were the guys who were responsible because in the internet education business, copywriting and marketing and offers is what makes it work. So from there, I just started learning that craft, learning that skill, coming in on the weekends, staying up late at night, reading as much as I could, talking to as many people as I could. And again, long story short, it eventually led me to where I am today.
Man, so cool. Dude, I'm just taking that in for a minute because that's such an interesting story. A few things I take from that is your hunger once you pop the bubble of possibility. And like what is seemingly impossible to most people, you heard it as like a throwaway statement almost. Like this is just an average day for us kind of thing. And that little spark sent you into this hunger to see how's that possible. And then you just dove into going after all the different things. And then you finally land on copywriting and offers. Man, I'm so curious is once you found that, what happened next?
So I had found it, right? And so it's funny you say this is like the bubble of possibility popped or whatever you said was very eloquent. And when I saw it and I heard it with my own 2 ears, I was like, this is possible. It's not like, is this possible? It is if you do the right things. And so that gave a lot of belief in myself. Like, it's almost like I had to see something outside of me to then believe what was inside of me to do it. And the first thing I did, because I'm not a naturally talented person. I'm not a naturally smart or gifted anything. I'm quite average. My base hardware is or software, whatever you call it, it's very average. I've had to build on top of it to be who I am today. What I did back then is I just went and found, okay, who is the best copywriter in this company? I found a guy named Carl Harvey. He was the head copywriter and he was the coolest guy in the company. Like he was wearing suits. He would drink champagne on the weekends. He listened to rap music. Everybody loved this guy, just oozing with charisma. And so I'm nervous because I'm about to walk up to this guy as like this nobody. I'm the youngest guy in the company at the moment, by the way. And I go approach him and I say, "Hey, are you busy?" He looks up to me and he says, "Yeah, mate, I'm busy." And then he keeps working. I was like, "Oh, gutted." So I go hide in the corner and I wait until he finally steps up and I like go hit him again. I'm like, "Hey, man, are you busy now?" He kind of rolls his eyes, but he kind of appreciates it. So he's like, "What's up?" And I say, "Can you teach me copywriting?" The very next day, he's taken me out to a lunch, this like 5-star lunch. In over 2 or 3 hours, he's telling me everything he knows about copywriting because he runs copywriting businesses. He's done 7-figure launches and he just reveals all these secrets. Boom, another bubble of possibility burst because now I see what it looks like and I'm like, "Ooh, I understand it. I actually get it." So you're telling me if I just focus on these things, I can create the same results? He says, yes. I end up working with him. He had a company underneath, there was a sister company that he ran. He hired me as his right hand person. And so I started working with him. I started seeing how it was done. He started training me. And then I eventually left the company to go do my own stuff. And I started just getting clients of a similar niche, similar industry. And I just started working my way up to building the roster, the client roster that I have today. I've worked with about 17 companies that do 100 to $300,000 a month. About 2 of them do like 1 to 3 million a month. And I've had the pleasure of seeing the inside of all of them, which has just taught me what to do, what not to do. It's been a business education in and of itself. It's funny to think it all started with that day I was in my room and I decided to drop out of college. So the experiment worked.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
You
One
know,
thing that I gleaned from this, because I mean, I had a similar background with working with a successful company, not on that level, but I got the opportunity to work with a YouTuber that had moderate success in her space. But it was similar. What I see in that is sometimes, and I mean, we're not saying that it's not possible to just start from nowhere, but if you're super young out there and you're watching or listening to this, sometimes one of the best things you can do to break through that metaphorical bubble of impossibility is to surround yourself and work in environments that they're doing the impossible daily. Because that was
mm,
one thing for me is like I was editing these videos, constantly hearing about the impossible being possible. And I mean, I'm standing where I am today because of partially because I was being fed this idea that what we see is the ceiling is only the not even the ground floor. I'd say like the basement to a lot of the possibilities that we can see. But I'm curious, so as you've learned this and you went through all these things, I'm curious to ask you, what would be in your opinion, what would be like the number one thing, like the first step, the best thing someone could do to get started in going after this?
got it. So I have a great response because it's what I did. So I usually follow this philosophy is like I would never tell someone to do what I haven't done or I'm not doing already. And if I do, I'll preface it by saying that. So
Yeah.
what I've always done is if you want to get started, you need to make a list of like who are the top people or top companies doing the thing that you want to get started with, right? If it's as broad as something like, I don't know, I just want to like do something and get into business, then make a list of businesses that are doing business and doing stuff and go work there, right? I applied. It was a typical job route, but the approach I took later on as I started to get more positioning where I didn't have to like go get a job with someone, but I could come in as a contractor or freelancer
Yeah.
with higher pay or more freedom in my schedule is I would literally go pitch people and offer to do something for them for free. What I learned early on is hunger demonstrates something that skill cannot. Okay. I'm not talented. I wasn't brilliant. I'm still not the best at what I do, but I demonstrate something that people want on their team. An example of this is when I was a copywriter and I wanted to upgrade into a marketer because you can earn more money when you learn those extra skills. I said, okay, who's the best marketer in the game? And how can I go work with them and learn exactly what they're doing behind the scenes? I found a guy. I went up to him at an event and I approached him and said, hey, I want to learn marketing. I'll work for free. He laughs in my face and then nothing happens. 2 months later, his assistant emails me and says, hey, my boss, the guy I approached, told me that you approached him at an event wanting to learn marketing. Guess what? We're taking on a marketing intern. Are you interested? I'm like, yes, of course. She says, okay, cool. You're going to have an interview with our co-founder next week. I get on this interview and I'm the first call of like 14 calls that they're having with people to like do this internship role. On that call, within 5 minutes, I said, hey, you know what? You should cancel all the other calls you have and hire me. And I promise you, I'm going to make it worth your time.
Wow.
Again, he laughs in my face. And then we continue the interview. 24 hours later, I get an email and says, I have bad news. I'm going to take your advice. I canceled all the other calls. I'm hiring you. You start next week. Right. And so that internship, which was supposed to last 4 months and I got paid very little, it ended 2 months early because I was doing such a good job that they decided to just promote me to head marketer right then and there. And like that path is pretty much open anywhere. You just have to be willing to like do the work and risk rejection. You just show a lot of bravado, a lot of confidence. And if you're willing to do the work it takes to at least step up and learn how to do it, it's like the door always swings open. So that's what I recommend someone if they want to get started anywhere.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
It's that idea of the hungry get fed. Man,
Man, that's a good one. The hungry get fed. I like that.
Man, that's so good. And I'm curious also when I ask these questions, I love to think of the flip side too. Like, what should the person that's asking that question of what should I do? On the flip side, what should they not do?
On the flip side, what should they not do? So much of this can be context dependent, right? But if let's say you're like at a beginning stage, you're trying to break through like that realm, we'll give advice there. The worst thing to do is to do what everyone else on your level is doing. And this relates to one of the biggest pieces of marketing advice, which is it's better is not better, different is better. In marketing, you want to stand out, you want to be different. That's the number one thing you want to do, right? And so if you want to get attention, if you want to command attention and get someone to look at you and have the doors of opportunity swing your direction, you just need to do something differently. So another example is if I'm applying for a copywriting job, and I did this before, where most people go through the form and they apply and they turn in their samples, I will take pieces of paper, right? I mean, that's not paper, but pieces of actual paper, and I will write. Copywriting is about selling somebody with writing. So I will write and I will write like, here's why you should hire me, blah, 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 blah. Like I'll try to sell them by actually writing them. I'll write it on paper and I'll send it to them in the mail. So even if my copy sucks, even if there's other people who are more skilled than me, it's like the me doing that is a demonstration that almost surpasses skill. So like showing that, what's that word where you take the lead? It starts with a P. I can't remember the word, but it's like, if you show initiative, that does a lot more than you would think so. So whatever everyone else is doing, take it like 3 steps deeper.
For sure. Dude, I love that. Man, so many different places we could go in this podcast. I just want to pause and say I appreciate you again for sharing your stories and being on the show. It's already been my favorite show so far. We're barely getting in. Something's just I can tell that you've put in the effort and that you're living what you're teaching. And I think that's so crucial in this space. And I love that idea of thinking differently. It's so important because I mean we're literally bombarded with so many different things, especially in the marketing space where the younger people, they're just following the lead of whoever is at the top telling them to do that. And like there's some like basic principles that work and are fundamentally great, but I love that idea of how can you expand on that. It kind of reminds me of I heard a quote recently. And this guy was saying, like, when you're consuming either a teaching or a course, whatever it may be, and you're taking notes on it, don't write what the person's saying. Write what they said, what it says to you, and what you are thinking about that. And I find myself doing that, and it's such a practical thing of taking it a step further. And that's where I think our stories are so important. Because I mean, there's no one on the planet like you, period. And a lot of people they get into this race of wanting to make it and grow a big business and grow a big following, and that ultimately is gonna start by not trying to be second rate someone else. Like, we don't need another Alex Hermosi. We don't need another Sam Ocean even. We need the people listening and watching to be the first them. And I think
Mm.
that's what a lot of people miss, and I think that's such an interesting thought to go on to. Man, I'm curious to ask this next question to kinda dive kind of a slightly different turn, but I'm curious to see your thoughts on it. So, you mentioned earlier on how you had this thought of, like, if you were gone tomorrow, what would happen? And I'm curious to think if you lost all that is important to you, money, relationships, job, health, etc., what would sustain you?
Got it. So I have a great question for that, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. You gave me such a wonderful compliment a few minutes ago about coming on here, sharing the story. I got a little bit of goosebumps when you said it because I still see myself as a that Sam I talked about 9 years ago. I still
Yeah,
see myself in that mindset. So one thing I don't let go. So every day I'm like, I keep the beginner's mindset and I'm like, okay, what's a cool thing I can go do today that stands out? Right. I don't ever try to use any authority or credibility I have. I'm always still trying to show hunger and to show demonstration because remember the experiment started like how can like I want to go make my life worth something and I want to share it in the process and the seed that started it is now turned into the big tree, but it all started from the same place and to never forget that. So anyways, thank you for saying that. It felt really
sure.
good. To your question, if kind of like if I lost it all, what would sustain me? Well, I kind of just revert back to that moment because I felt like I didn't have much then. And so what kind of sustains me in that sense is this concept. I'll throw rocks first. Is most people say you got to follow your passion, like you got to find what you're passionate about. I think that's a little bit BS. Actually, I think it's a lot of BS. Now, I generally agree with the idea. Okay, not trying to be controversial for
Right.
controversy's sake, but it's hard. It's a hard signal to look for externally or in the body. Everyone struggles to know what their passions are. Now, we both know it's things like, well, you got to go try things out and you got to go live some life and you'll eventually start to find it. That's true. But how do you start? Where do you start today? I'm not a fan of following your passion. I'm a fan of doing what's called following your excitement. Okay. Excitement is a very clear signal in the body. It is that feeling in your stomach or the feeling in your chest. And mentally, you get brought into the present moment and you forget everything else exists. It can be a big, exciting moment, or it can be like a flicker of a feeling of excitement that just starts to make your heart flutter a little bit. Whenever I follow my excitement, it always leads me to the right place.
Yeah.
And it's happened so much, I'm beginning to believe it's a spiritual thing. It's actually a very spiritual concept. Ancient religious texts will say things like enthusiasm is like being breathed upon by the gods. When you feel excited about anything, that are the gods and the deities like telling you, yes, like whatever that is, like that's the direction you go. So my life, if I lost it all, I would find the pulse of excitement and I would take a step in that direction. It will always shift and change, but it always leads you in the right path.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
Follow the pulse. That
Uh,
excitement, I think that's so true. And
mm,
I even take it similar route when I think about it too. I think about that, what makes you come alive? And
yes.
I find myself asking that question, like, what is it that I would lose sleep over? And
Yeah.
also, what is it that would wake me up at ridiculous hours and go do ridiculous things and forget to eat and all the things? Like it's funny 'cause
Bro,
sometimes. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know I kind of just said that, but the way you said it, I feel like I need to go take notes because you said it in a way where I haven't really thought about it. So bravo, man.
Sure, I appreciate it,
Let me
man.
write it here while you're speaking.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
Right.
dude, that's awesome. But yeah, it's that idea of like, yeah, what makes you come alive? What makes you think, yeah, I'm gonna lose sleep over this, and what's gonna make you wake up and wait crazy hours? I
Mhm.
think of and it's and that's much and that's where you discover your passion and that's where you discover your calling. Because I'm a proponent of that idea. I truly feel like we were created on purpose with a purpose, and that a lot of our life is discovering that purpose. And
Mm.
it's not necessarily like you discover it and then the rest of your life is milk and honey. It's like you were always slowly peeling back different layers, and that's gonna come with the hardships, that's gonna come with the successes, that'll be the mountains and the valleys, but it's like the duality of needing both that's so crucial that I feel like a lot of people, they'll start chasing comfort almost. They'll chase comfort and convenience, and I don't necessarily I would push back on that idea and think that a lot of times when we're chasing comfort and convenience, we're not truly living. Because I
Yeah,
mean, and it's that idea of what makes you come alive. I mean, sometimes near death experiences make us feel most alive. And it's
uh,
just such an interesting thought.
man,
But I'm curious.
spot on.
I'm curious to think because a lot of times when we think about this, I like to think of this idea of happiness. Because when I think about happiness, I feel like it's such a fleeting thing to chase after, and it's an emotion that can change. But I feel like the opposite, well, not the opposite, but something much more sustainable is joy. Because I feel like you can choose to have joy, and happiness is something that's more fluid and can come and go, and more so and it's an emotion, and I feel like emotions are more information than they are other things. But I might be getting in the weeds with that, but I'm curious to think when it comes to joy, another thought that comes to my mind is peace. So
Mm.
where in your life do you have complete peace of mind?
Okay, good question. I feel like I heard my girlfriend in the corner go like, I being on so doing the business game, entrepreneurship, right? I don't consider myself a true entrepreneur. I've just learned the skills that allow me to do what an entrepreneur would do. It has definitely been more of a rocky roller coaster thing. And so just getting it out of the way, one thing that I do find peace in is the process of doing things that I actually like. So like it's the typical don't focus on the destination, focus on the journey, right? So that is something I find peace in. And what I've come to accept is like what I find peace in is that I've accepted business, this thing I do is not what I'm the most excited about. It's a skill I've learned that I happen to be good at that has some fun applications to it, allow me to create something that then brings me to what brings me like kind of the peace. And so for me, man, like like writing, reading, hanging out with good people, going out to dance, celebrating with a nice drink of tequila with the people I love, like that, just the thought of that is enough to bring me peace. I don't even have to live it. I mean, I do live it, but even just thinking about that brings like this internal kind of wave of relaxation or calmness for me, which is interesting.
That is super interesting. And I love that. I
Yeah.
love that thought. It reminds me of I recently heard a story and this father was talking to his son and I think they were like either getting ready for him to go to summer camp or you might have seen me I recently tweeted about it. But he was asking his son like what are you hoping to get out of this going to summer camp? And the son said simply I want to meet new people and do cool things.
Ooh,
And and I love the simplicity of that because I feel like so much in life, especially in these entrepreneurial journeys where we're trying to hit these huge numbers and get these huge followings, but for what? And it's
yeah.
like if you could bring it down to the most simplest form, meet new people, do cool things. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's kind of like my philosophy is this idea of I want to meet cool people, like my new friend Sam. I want to do cool things like sharing these experiences that we've had, go out and do my own experiences because it's so easy. And I, if I could give any advice to the younger people watching and listening, is don't get so bogged down in the doing of trying to grow your personal brand that you forget to be. You forget to
Yeah.
go enjoy life and create those beautiful moments that will in turn become things for your business or make you more interesting or whatever. It's that idea of go do cool things. Go meet new people and do cool things. And I think that's so interesting.
So let me add to that because, man, if we could emphasize that, and just do a 10-hour podcast just on repeating that
Right.
same thing over and over. Because if we go back to something I said before, I picked up a camera, I started a YouTube channel. So this is a little bit more tactical, but I did a YouTube channel for 5 years, man. And there were some times where I was like inconsistent on and off, but generally I posted a lot of videos over 5 years. After 5 years, I had 500 subscribers. Okay. That's considered a loss. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those painful things you realize, like, oh man, like, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
That's the story for a lot of people. The difference was I never gave up until I did. But what I realized is my journey became, video. I know YouTube. It's the platform that takes the most amount of time. Twitter takes the least amount of time, and nobody realizes it. So I spend so much time creating videos about what I'm going to do in life that I had no time to actually go do life.
Yeah.
I caught the loop and I was like, oh, I need to break this. This is weird. So I stopped. This is when I discovered copywriting, all this stuff, stopped doing videos, and I just started diving into life. I got all this experience, and it leads me back to where I am today, which I've been able to blow up onto the scene on Twitter just because I bring a breadth of experience that, I'm not lucky to have. I spent years like hustling and working for it.
Right.
Right? And so the one of the best personal brand strategies, something I will live for as long as I do this, is do cool and talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? Would you said do cool, meet cool people and do cool things, right?
Yeah.
If you want to add that personal brand business aspect to it, meet cool people, do cool things, share it.
Yeah.
Share that, and like, that's a good personal brand.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And that even brings up this other kind of philosophy that I've adapted in my life. It's this idea of 3 words, and it's serve, grow, create.
Mm.
And it's these questions that I like to ask myself. It's like, who can I serve today? How can I grow today? And what can I create? And if I
Mm.
can answer those 3 questions, then I've accomplished the day. Because it's that idea of, and it can piggyback off of that idea of meeting cool people and doing great things and documenting it. And I think that would be the creative aspect of those 3 words, is like creating in a way that's, how can I share what how I've grown and how I've served someone? How can I go share that with someone else? Man, that's such a cool thought to think on. But yeah, I agree. We can make a 10-hour podcast just saying that, because
Mm.
I agree. I had a similar thing. I started podcasting in 2018, and I was putting out a podcast once a week. And then I got onto YouTube and was putting out all these videos in similar space that you were in. And I was in the space of like, I've seen very small growth at it. And it was that idea of, when I stopped like not having time to have a life, when I stopped not having the time to go do the cool things, and then it like stagnated the growth. But when I decided, no, I'm going to go do cool stuff and then start documenting it again recently, it's like, oh, okay, cool. That's great that you're doing these things. But yeah, I think it's such an interesting thought. Man, I'm curious. So what's really cool about my podcast is I've recently been asking my previous guests to leave a question for my current guest.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'd love to kind of play what my previous guest left for you and to see where that takes it.
Ooh, let's do it.
What you're building now, the path you're going down, you're working so hard. Are you doing it to yourself, or are you doing it for other people? And when I say other people, I mean kind of the pressure of your family or your friends to be something, become someone. Or are you doing what you want?
Oh, he was saying, okay, so like what you're building, what you're creating,
Mm.
what you're doing, are you doing that for other people, or are you doing it for yourself? And he meant like not in the space of
Yeah.
like wanting to help people, but in the space of, are you doing it for those people and not for yourself?
Great. It's funny. I have an amazing answer for both questions, both versions of that question, but I'll answer the one he asked.
For sure.
Very easy. I've been doing it for myself ever since I made the decision to drop out of college, because that decision was one for myself. I'm thankful because my family instantly was like, they didn't get it, but they supported it. I've just developed
Yeah.
that level of trust with them. So I never had that there was a little bit of friction when I did it, but you know, I was lucky to have parents who loved me so much where I was like, it's going to be fine. And it was. So I didn't have any other friction because I didn't really have friends at the time either. So I didn't have to go tell all my friends and they're like, oh, what are you doing, Sam? You're so stupid. I was just instantly free. So from that day forward, I'm generally going in the North Star of what Sam Ocean wants, right? Which is a great start. There have been little mini moments in between then where I get confused on if this is a me thing or if this is a somebody else thing. And it's much less about the pressure of what other people expect of me. It's much more about the pressure of, is this what they would do also? And when I say they, I mean kind of the people I look up to, people who are more
Right.
successful in my circle. I get stuck in, is this what Sam wants to do or is this the best thing to do?
Mm,
I say it that way because sometimes the best is not the best thing.
yeah.
I think it's what's optimal is what's matter. What's optimal for what Sam truly wants. And that's a thing I'm like very close to being very clear on that, but I still ask myself that sometimes. So long story short, generally, yes, everything I do today, I'm doing it because it's for me and it's exactly what I want to do.
I love that. And I like that idea that you mentioned. It's not necessarily about being the best, but it's about being what's optimal. And I think
Mhm.
of it too as like when we think of that vague term of success, I feel like it could be defined in so many different ways. Like for some it could be scaling to these huge sums of money and building these huge businesses. But at what point do they not become sustainable for that person that's building them? Because I mean, you've seen it all the time. You've seen like the wealthy people, the multimillionaires that are heartbroken and depressed because they've reached such a pinnacle of success for the wrong reasons and for just like when they answer that question, they answer it in the fact that they probably were doing it for everyone else except for them. And then they get to the top to realize it's so lonely. But yeah, man,
Man,
that's such
it,
interesting.
that's a can of worms conversation. I love going into it because I've been fortunate in my perspective. My first job was at an 8-figure marketing company in a city that I called the New York of Asia. And I just happened to network with, I wasn't the cool guy, but I hung out with the cool guys and they got me into cool places. So I brushed shoulders with a lot of wealth, rich people out of pure luck. I'm not one of them, but I got to see what it's like. I'm talking going into hotel rooms where they're evacuating the whole like hotel area, but we get to stay because it's some rich oil tycoon's birthday and they liked us. Like I've heard the conversations and the things that you kind of hear about these people are true. I've heard rich people look at people who made much less money and say, I'm jealous of your life because you can actually go do anything. My schedule's booked for the next year and I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Things like
Yeah.
this. So when it comes to what I want to do, I follow this concept of it's not about more, it's about closer. So this idea of a 7-figure business might actually be worse than a 6-figure business because with 7 figures becomes 7 figures of responsibility,
Yeah.
time, energy, all of these things. And that's going to take you away from the things you truly want outside of business, which is like more time with your kids. You want to keep the relationship with your wife sparked and romantic. So for me, what I want to do in life, and this is answering the second part of that guy's
Yeah.
question. Most people want to help a million lives and change a billion people. I don't care about that, right? I love helping people, but that's not the core focus on my, internal vision board. I want to go eat good food, drink good tequila, and go dance salsa. And I want to do it with people that I love, right? I want to go travel, do it with people I love, and I want to talk about that online. I want to tell good stories. That's what I want to do. So every decision I make in my business or my personal brand needs to bring me closer to that thing. So if I decide, should I take on this partner? Should I take on this project? Sure, it could be more money, but is that all going to bring me closer to these things that I want? I made this big mistake for the last 7 years of my life where I had many periods where I earned great money and I had no time to enjoy it.
Hmm.
So just harsh lessons all around. So don't optimize for more, optimize for closer. Closer to what? Well, you tell me.
Man, dude, that's
Yeah.
so good. Don't optimize for more, optimize for closer. Yeah, it's kind of like I've adapted this thought of um becoming more by doing less. And it's essentially what you're saying without saying it.
Note down. I'm writing that down.
For sure, for sure.
How
And
much do I owe you for this?
you name the price and send it up. But yeah, and it's that, and then the idea of slowing down, because I personally, that was something that I had to learn the hard way. Because so much of my life, I felt like I was always chasing the next thing and wanting to get there faster. Like I wanted to be there yesterday. I wanted to be there years ago.
Mhm.
And coming to that space, and that took me getting married and having 2 kids now to kinda get a little wiser, in the fact of like, can I slow down and be present in this moment? And it's crazy how, and I probably would say that would be one of the biggest lessons I've learned from being a father, is it's crazy how fast time is going by,
Mm.
and even more so, how much we miss when we're not present in the current moment.
Yeah.
Because and I always think of it like there's plenty of times we've adopted family Fridays in my house where we try to spend as much time as we can on Fridays together. And I can think there's been times when we first started this that my mind's going to, what's the next thing I'm gonna write? What's the next piece of content I'm gonna create? And
Mhm.
I miss some of the most beautiful moments with my kids. And I'm like, oh no, we're gonna catch that now, and we're gonna slow down and we're gonna be present in that current moment. And it's just such an interesting take. But yeah. Yeah,
Can I
man,
ask you about that?
for sure.
Is it is it hard to make that to be present in that moment? Is it a internal battle in your head, or is it like it's an easy choice to make?
It's I wouldn't say it's getting easier, but I'm developing that skill better. Cause
Wow.
definitely, cause I mean, I come from this space of like, I mean, I think of my sports career, or just like I can be very obsessive on a task or goal or thing that I want to achieve, to the point that I can tunnel vision my way into getting there. And
Mhm.
it can definitely be tough. Like, I remember one time me and my wife were on a date, and I was getting a DM from someone that was gonna be a guest on the podcast, and he was kinda, like, solidifying when he could be a guest, and I find myself sitting across from my wife on my phone, and she's just talking, and then she goes quiet, and I'm like, "What's up?" And I look up, and she's just staring at me, and I'm like, What's wrong, babe?" And she's like, "Can that really not wait?"
Mhm.
We've dropped the kids off with the grandparents. We have some time for just us, and we're supposed to enjoy these tacos we're eating. And you're messaging someone else about work, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm like, "Thanks, babe, you're right." And I was like, "But you know what? Here's my phone, 'cause, I can't trust myself to not check it, so you just hold it for the rest of the meal."
Wow.
And it's, yeah, it's that idea, and I think that's something that definitely takes, I feel like I'm getting better. I don't wanna say that it's something that's always gonna be a struggle, 'cause I don't. I believe that you can definitely grow in an area. But yeah, I definitely think it's something that has to be actively thought about, and you have to be intentional in your approach to it. And you definitely, it's why I think it's so important to have coaches and mentors and people in our life that are going to call out our blind spots when we can't see them.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I guess I would say on that one.
I love that, man. It kind of displays that you're making a choice, which removes the belief that there's like some type of shortcut, which I think
Mhm.
people want there to be an easy way. It's like,
Oh,
yeah, the
yeah,
easy way is decide you're going to do it. Again,
exactly.
the reason I ask is I learn best when I hear other people talk about
Mm,
their thought process on how they do things. And as you can see, I've actually been taking notes on some of the things you've said.
I love
And
that.
I respect your perspective, which is I have this conversation in my head, which is this idea of we should, what would you say, become more by doing less. You can apply the same thing to business almost. It's this idea of do less to get more, addition by
Mhm.
subtraction. And my whole question has been like, well, how far can you reasonably take that? It's this whole idea of, you can take, you don't work on the weekends, right? Work 5 days, don't work on the weekends as a business owner. It's like, well, could I work only 3 days?
Yeah.
Can I work
Yeah.
2 days? Can I work only one day? It's like, you start to shorten that and it starts to sound a little bit crazier, like, oh, well, you probably got to work more than one day. And I'm like, well, where is that line? And I get stuck in this logical situation of like, well, what's realistic and what's not? Because that probably comes down to a belief thing. It's like, it's all realistic depending on what you build, what you believe, how you set up the system. So there's my loop, bro.
Dude, I love that. And that makes me, as you said that, and I agree. There's a coach that I really look up to, and he mentions how he works 3 days a week. It's like 3 weeks a month, and he takes 2 full months off a year. And I'm like, and
Wow.
he's grown his business to crazy heights in a way
Wow.
that's so sustainable for him. And I'm like, in my eyes, he has both. He's built the fulfillment. He's meeting the cool people, doing the cool stuff, and he's done it in a way that's sustainable. And I'm like, that's a possibility. So
Mhm.
the only difference between getting there and beat me now and getting there is just figuring out how it's done. But yeah, dude, that's such a great thought to go
So good.
into. Man, so good. Sam, it's been a pleasure, and I can't believe it's already almost been an hour. I feel like we could go 10 more hours, like you said, but I definitely want to value both of our time. So as we wrap up, I just really only have one more question for you, and that's the question that I would love for you to leave my next guest. So it's again, it's you asking you for another question, but essentially this time, this one's for my future guest, whoever they may be.
Okay. Do we have that person lined up? You don't got to tell me names, but is that person lined up? Who is this going to be, like a creator type of person, an entrepreneur
Yeah,
type?
more than likely it'll be a creator, entrepreneur type people. I don't have them necessarily lined up right now. Thankfully I've been quite ahead for the month as far as recording podcasts. But yeah, man, it'll be the creator type entrepreneur.
Okay. I'm going to ask a simple question, which is tough for a lot of people to answer.
Was that not a fire conversation? I know you're going to leave better than before you tuned into it. And if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to hit the subscribe button on screen. And if you want to continue watching more inspiring and encouraging content, you can click here. If you really got something out of this, or if you have any feedback so that we can make this show even better, don't hesitate, drop a comment below. As always, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.